Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Today, I'm going to talk about hand gestures.
And that's what makes gestures like that interesting historically. They all operate almost like words. A culture agrees that a particular movement means something, but that meaning can evolve, disappear, or become exactly the opposite of what an outsider expects.
So today we're looking at several famous examples.
Yeah, a warning before we start. Several of these gestures have obscene or sexual origins. So we will have to explain those meanings. That's history.
Now, flipping the bird. Now, this is the one almost every American recognizes, the middle finger. We often call it giving someone the finger or flipping the bird. And this is also generally when you do this in America, it also means F you to someone. And Merriam-Webster defines flipping the bird as American slang for making the offensive gesture with the middle finger extended. But the gesture itself is definitely not American, is it, Dr. Dineen?
Not at all, Chandler. Not even close. It goes back at least to ancient Greece, 2,500 years ago, in Aristophanes' comedy The Clouds, that's from the 5th century BCE. A character makes a joke involving the middle finger, and the joke works precisely because the audience apparently already understood the sexual implication of the gesture.
And that sexual implication is important. The extended middle finger was understood as a phallic symbol. The gesture wasn't simply saying, I don't like you. It was deliberately vulgar, as Chandler said. It sort of means F you.
And that wasn't only Greek, the Romans knew it too. As with so many things, they had a wonderfully direct Latin name for the middle finger. They called it the digitus impudicus, essentially the indecent or shameless finger. Roman writers, including Martel, refer to its insulting use.
So when somebody thinks they're being rebellious by giving the finger, they're using it as an insult. And it's roughly 2,000 years older than the United States itself.
What is newer is the American expression describing it, which is flipping the bird. The phrase and the gesture shouldn't be confused. The middle finger insult is ancient. Calling it the bird is much more modern American slang.
Now we come to a gesture that many Americans would not even recognize as insulting. Make a fist, but push your thumb between your index and middle finger. That is commonly called the fig sign, mano fica.
And this one gets confusing very quickly because that same little hand shape has meant obscenity, refusal, protection, and good luck, depending on when and where you use it.
Its history goes back at least to the ancient Mediterranean world. Fig shaped hand amulets were used as protection against evil, including the evil eye. The Founding Museum in London has an example and notes that the gesture has carried meanings ranging from a crude insult to good luck and supernatural protection.
Once again, the sexual symbolism was fairly obvious to earlier societies. The thumb protruding between the fingers represented sexual anatomy, and strangely enough, that obscenity could be considered protective. I don't know why. The theory was essentially that a vulgar or sexually charged symbol could repel evil. Taracani's discussion of Italian superstition describes the fig gesture as one of several traditional protective gestures associated with both fertility and sexual symbolism.
But it could also simply insult somebody, and we have a very famous literary example.
We certainly do. It's in one of my favorite books. Dante uses it in the Inferno. In Canto 25, the thief Vanni Fucci raises his hands toward God and makes figs in an act of obscene spiritual defiance. Medieval readers would have understood immediately that this was not meant as a friendly gesture.
Yeah, and here is where cultural differences become fascinating. In some Slavic and Turkish contexts, versions of the fig can mean something like, you're getting nothing, or no chance. Yet in Portugal and Brazil, the figa has traditionally been used as a good luck or protective symbol. And in the United States, the same basic hand position can appear in the completely innocent children's game, I've got your nose.
Some of these signs, they can have completely different meanings. Use the same fingers, but completely different conversation.
Okay, let's look at the Italian two armed insult. This Italian gesture requires considerably more movement. You bend one arm upward at the elbow. With the other hand, you strike or grasp the inside of that bent elbow.
That's right. And even if you don't know exactly what it means, you can usually tell from the person's face that they're not wishing you a pleasant afternoon.
In Italy, it's often called the gesto di ombrello, the umbrella gesture, or fare macetto. Treccani describes it as a phallic insulting gesture in which one hand strikes the inside of the opposite elbow as that forearm rises.
Yeah, the closest polite English translation would be something like up yours, or take that, or you didn't get the better of me. But polite translation is kind of doing a lot of work here.
That's pretty much it. And unlike the middle finger, this is practically a full body punctuation mark.
Treccani makes another important point. Although we tend to think of this gesture as stereotypically Italian, versions of the gesture are found outside Italy as well. Gestures don't respect national borders any more than words do.
And the exact emotional meaning depends on context. It can convey contempt, defiance, refusal, triumph over somebody, or simply an emphatic, vulgar dismissal.
Now let's talk about the thumbs up. This is the gesture that Americans probably think is the safest of all, but it's not the case always. It's the thumbs up, and Americans think it could mean good job, I agree, everything's fine. What could possibly go wrong?
History, for one thing, Chandler. There's a popular story that Roman spectators at gladiator fights gave a thumbs up to spare a gladiator and a thumbs down to have him killed. The problem is that the evidence doesn't give us that nice Hollywood system.
Ancient writers do refer to judgments being expressed with the thumb, but scholars have debated exactly how the thumb was positioned and what the different positions meant. There is evidence suggesting that concealing or compressing the thumb could represent mercy, while an exposed or upturned thumb could indicate use of the sword. So the modern thumbs up equals life, thumbs down equals death story should not be presented as an established Roman practice.
Which means that Gladiator is not your anthropology textbook.
Chandler, you're absolutely correct. The modern thumbs up became strongly associated with approval and success, particularly in Western culture, and mass media and digital technology have spread that meaning enormously. Just look at the familiar thumbs up symbol for like.
But it still isn't perfectly universal. Historically, in Iran, an upright thumb could function as a serious insult rather than a compliment. The offensive meaning appears to have weakened among some younger people as Western media and social media usage has spread, which is itself a good example of gestures changing in real time,
And sometimes thumbs up doesn't mean either approval or insult. In countries including Germany, France, Hungary, and Finland, the raised thumb can simply represent just the number one, depending on the situation.
And there's another excellent example, China, from a specialized culture rather than a national culture. Among scuba divers, thumbs up doesn't mean everything's okay. It means go on up, ascend.
which is why divers have separate underwater signal for okay. Uh, Context changes the vocabulary for sure.
Here's another gesture where context matters enormously. Extend the index finger and little finger while keeping the middle fingers folded. Americans may look at that and think rock music, but an Italian may see something quite different.
Wow, rock music, huh? And those are la corna, meaning the horns.
And even within Italy, the meaning depends on how they're used. Grab this. The horns can be a protective gesture intended to ward off bad luck, or malachia, the evil eye. Tricani describes the gesture's long association with superstition, protection, strength, and fertility symbolism.
But point the horns at another person in the wrong context, and you may be insulting them instead. Traditionally, horns directed towards a man can imply that he's a cuckold, that his partner has been unfaithful. Treccani's dictionary accordingly describes ferulacorna as capable of being either a gesture of contempt or something used like a charm to ward off misfortune.
Okay, so we now have a gesture that could mean rock and roll, protection from evil, or an insult about somebody's marriage. Wow, that's quite interesting. Now, this is one that Americans can get wrong very easily. If you hold up your index and middle fingers in a V, most Americans see peace or victory.
But now turn the hand around. In Britain, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and some other places influenced by British usage, displaying those same two fingers with the palm facing inward could be an insult comparable to giving somebody the finger. Collins' dictionary specifically distinguishes the insulting palm inward British V sign from the palm outward victory sign.
And this allows us to kill off another popular historical story. You probably heard that the insulting two finger gesture originated at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, when English longbowmen supposedly displayed their intact bow fingers to the French. It's a wonderful story. There's just no contemporary evidence for it. The insulting V sign is historically documented much later, while the Agincourt explanation is generally treated as folklore rather than established history.
Exactly, and that's almost a rule with gestures. The more entertaining the origin story, the more suspicious we should be.
So, why can the same hand position mean approval in one place and an insult someplace else?
Because, Dr. Weaver, gestures are cultural symbols. Once a community agrees on a meaning, people learn it just as they learn vocabulary. Treccani describes these symbolic or emblematic gestures, movements that have culturally shared meanings and can sometimes substitute for spoken words altogether.
And that explains something else, too. A gesture can change meanings without changing its shape. The fig moves from obscenity to protection or good luck. The horns can be protective or insulting. The V can mean peace or contempt, depending on which direction your palm is facing. The thumb can mean approval. The number one, an insult, or go to the surface.
And with that, We'll keep our hands where everyone can see them. Thanks for joining us on Things You Don't Know.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
And until then, be careful what you signal and leave a like and subscribe. Bye for now, folks.